what's going to happen when you get to the fall, even if there's not a second wave, people will need flu tests for the normal flu.
Last week, roughly 38% of the tests in New York were positive. This week, that number is down to 28%. New cases in New York are down 50% compared to a week ago, and fatalities are down 40% over the same period. In Louisiana, the rate of positive test resulted declined from 25% down to 15% in the last 7 days alone. 18 states now show a decline in a number of positive tests in the last 7 days. So over the last 7 days, been very, very significant progress.
There's a difference between what I want and what's going to happen. Hopefully it's going to happen because I have the confidence in public health. I have confidence in Ontario Health. What I want to see people being tested. And if you have symptoms, please go to an assessment center. I repeat it, if you have symptoms, please go to the assessment center, because a lot of people, we don't seem to see the traffic through the assessment centers.
Qu'est-ce que c'est que ce bordel? So something a bit different this week, because I'm getting really sick of COVID nonsense. What am I referring to? Well, unless you have lived on the rock or, on a desert island, you probably noticed that we have been on lockdown for the past few months. And if, like me, you are very unlucky, you lived in an area where politicians want to keep you locked up for the rest of eternity. What's the justification for that? A prediction of million upon millions of dead from the Ferguson model, for a virus sharing most of its genome with H1N1.
I smell bullshit.
Why is it bullshit? Well, beside the joke that was H1N1, remember that one? The prediction was based on an algorithm, essentially a SimCity without the UI, that was calculating everything. Except, of course, that thing was bugged to hell. That monstrosity consisted of 15,000 lines of C++ in a single file that had never been maintained, full of bugs to the point where fixing one broke something else in the code. How can I put that delicately?
If this was a human being, I'd shoot it in the face.
Sounds about right. I'm a computer engineer, and that thing is essentially the embodiment of everything you should not do. So obviously this is what every single public institution does. That's one of the reasons I refuse to work government contracts. Essentially what they were doing is running this program full of bugs multiple times, and in order to get the result that they wanted, they would just average the result of all of these runs. So based on that, and the videos of the Chinese scrambling, even though we know everything the CCP does is posturing, multiple governments decided to lock the population down. Let's be honest, hindsight is always 20/20, so I will give them this one. However, things went down the drain at record speed. The media reported the construction of field hospitals, the need of thousands upon thousands of respirators, soon followed by reports of thousands upon thousands of dead and infected. Karens from all the world united on social media to demand everyone remained inside at all times, lest the plague kills us all. Except we immediately started to notice a trend. The trend of virtually no one dying. So what was happening in all these hotspots? All of them under lockdown, mind you. Well, in New York, the city that painted itself as a picture of preparedness, Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio decided it was a splendid idea to send the recovering patients in care homes. In other words, in the exact location where the most at-risk population was located, even for the other SARS virus. And all of these field hospitals? Well, they were dismantled without seeing a single patient.
That's fucking stupid. I mean, really. What is wrong with these people?
The counting methods, if you want to call them that, were also immediately decried as being far too vague and were going to include a lot of people who did not actually die from COVID, despite Fauci's claim. This was confirmed by funeral homes saying that every single death certificate had COVID on it. This is a telltale sign that the numbers are wrong, considering that every other sickness, virus, bacteria, or just, old age have not stopped just because COVID came up. The reason seems to be that whenever there is a death by COVID, the health services are not expected to do an investigation on this death like they would normally do, making the thing a lot more expedient. We don't know what it is so yet, but what I think is going on is that hospitals which are running at a much lower capacity and personnel, because some services were deemed non-essential, have their hands full with patients with COVID or requiring vital treatment, thus not having the time to actually confirm the cause of death of every single patient. That might sound a bit conspiratorial, but that's why I'm having doubts about the overwhelmed claim. Like I said before, none of the field hospitals received a single patient, and all of these thousands of respirators that were made specifically for the occasion have not been used. They went straight to stock. And I am not joking, none of them were used, respirators or field hospitals, which, by definition, means that the hospitals were most likely not overwhelmed, they were just probably at capacity. But we will have to wait for the dust to settle to be absolutely sure of what was going on in the hospitals. So how is the population being affected by the virus? Well, for everyone under 65 and even over 65 without any health condition, has a ridiculously low chance of dying, and for many, do not show any symptoms during the entire duration of the sickness. In my case, when I had it in February, I got the worst case of flu that I ever had, but that was it. And for somebody my age, that was already an outlier. Some studies, one of them from the University of Southern California, claimed that the infection rate was in reality much higher than what it actually was in the official number, going between 28 to 55 times just in the LA County. These studies were immediately called flawed, fake, conspiracy theories by the media, the journals, etc., even though this is exactly what was to be expected with a sickness leaving people mostly asymptomatic. So at the end of May, what do we know about COVID, or how severe is it? Well, the CDC has released a bunch of new scenarios, and their best estimate for the fatality rate is 0.4% overall. The 65-plus-year-old have a fatality rate of 1.3%, but I will remind you that this includes both the people who have comorbidities and the ones who don't. For reference, H1N1, which is still around, can have a fatality rate of 1 to 4% overall, and the regular flu has a fatality rate among the 65-plus-year-old of a little bit over 0.8%. In other words, the Kung flu really isn't any more serious than any other flu, just like many, including myself, have been saying for weeks and attacked every time we said so. So what do we have to show for it? We have politicians sending the recovering patient where they should absolutely not have gone, going on a massive power trip, with California filling up skate parks with sand, encouraging snitching, tracking your position at all time, ruining the economy, and let's not forget our buddy Trudeau banning guns without any due process. So with the good news I just spoke about, you would think that the politician would be reopening everything immediately and target only the care homes and vulnerable population, wouldn't you? Fuck no, they're doubling down hard. For Trudeau, with the help of the NDP, a party even more left-wing than the Liberals, has suspended Parliament until September. Governors in Democrat area want to extend lockdown forever, or at least until the God Emperor is not in the White House, and whenever people give the almighty government the middle finger, politicians will use their most patronizing tone to talk down to us peasants. And if the pleb does not stop being naughty, they might well have to go back into lockdown, they say. Even though JP Morgan compared countries with and without lockdown, and turns out the lockdown countries did worse than the ones without lockdown. And if you ask me who I am going to trust between bankers or politicians, I'm going to trust the one who has to show results. That's the banker if I'm being too subtle. But of course it gets worse, because when company owners reopen their businesses, even following the useless guidelines of the government, it will still send you its goons to shut you down, fine or jail you and your patrons. Because of course, your business being essential to your survival is completely non-essential to government officials who are still being paid. Don't you know they're trying to save lives? And if you are curious about the states that have already reopened, they are seeing lowered infection rates after the lockdown ended. States that did not close at all are also seeing better numbers and are well on their way to build herd immunity. To sum it all up, we have a virus that does comparable damage to other viruses, that is just as infectious, and yet this time, for some reason, we should treat it differently. And I'd like to remind you that this is going to be seasonal. It will be back for the flu season. So what are we going to do for this fall? Going back into lockdown? And what will we do next time China has a sneeze and the communists try to hide it? This entire ordeal has been a massive overreaction, and people are having their livelihood destroyed because a bunch of politicians are doing one or two or both things. One, they don't want to take responsibility for the worst fuck-up in decades and kill their political career. Two, they want the crisis to continue for political gains. Like Cuomo in New York, who had the worst fuck-up of them all, or like Whitmer in Michigan, who is probably trying to tank the economy in hope that it will hurt the re-election chances of the God Emperor. So, if you don't want to remain close until your local overload has decreed, I encourage you to share the CDC and the JP Morgan articles, links in the description below, because Keck knows the media is not going to propagate actual information, and I dare hope if even one person learns the truth, then it's one person that will not be fooled as easily as before. But most importantly, if you do not want to live in a 1984 hellhole, you have to demand your politician take the actions that you want them to take and remind them that they are public servants. They are not rulers and they need to be reminded of that. In the meantime, if you have enjoyed my little rant or having actual information, please subscribe, click the bell, leave a like, and hopefully next week I will have something more cheerful to talk about. Salut, bonsoir!